Diablo 4's expansion, Vessel of Hatred, as well as Season 6 have been out for 3 days at this point. It's the 11th. It came out on the 7th for me. And as it stands, I am in Torment 4. I have defeated all of the bosses that you can do, everything from Torment 4 Lilith to all of the ladder bosses solo. I've done the Dark Citadel with the team on Tier 4. I've got to like 85 of the pits. I got to like 192 of the Paragon. Hit for 1.5 billion damage, which you might think, wow, that's a ton of damage, especially after a stat squish. But with the Spiritborn, I'm seeing people hit upwards of 300 billion damage. The class is absolutely nutty and very enjoyable. But let's talk about the current state of the game now that I've had the chance to play the in-game quite a bit and how I'm feeling about it. Now, the first thing we have to talk about, and I mentioned this in my first impressions, but it's worth reiterating, is that the progression and itemization of the game now in its current state is significantly different. And in my opinion, this is one of the biggest improvements that they have made with the game since the launch. Originally, at the start of the game, you felt like the world tiers almost didn't matter. You would start in what was basically World Tier 2, and then you would be in World Tier 3 for a very short period of time using Sacred Gear, which didn't feel very good because it's just a stopgap measure until you get Ancestral Gear and World Tier 4. And you would blast right through World Tier 3, you get to the end of World Tier 4, and then your progression basically stops. You put on Ancestral Gear, and then it's sort of just min-maxing. Maybe you're finishing your level 100 and the grind wasn't very satisfying. Now they've added these Torments. So Torment 1 basically unlocks everything. Torment 2, 3, and 4 are pretty big gaps in terms of progression where you're continuing to min-max your gear further and further, but it also comes with additional drops in terms of gold experience and chances to get better gear. And there's quite a gap between 3 and 4. So as you're pushing through these, you actually do feel a push back from the minions and you do feel the power progression. I will say that Torment 4 definitely has a significant ramp up from 3. Like there's a pretty big gap there between 3 and 4. You can go from like dominating 3 to getting like one shot in Torment 4. So that one is going to catch some people off guard. But I also like the way they reduce your armor and resistances. So not only are you having to focus on offensive power, but you're kind of having to play the mini game of making sure your resistances are good, or just getting a greater affix resist all in like the, you know, a Tyro's Might or something. You basically solve this. But I do find myself actually caring about defenses way more than I have previously, and the progression and itemization is actually something I'm enjoying, as previously it was something that was like actively hurting the experience. This has been significantly improved now, and it's an enjoyable part of the game. Now, there is a part that people currently aren't liking in the season, and that will be the gatekeeping of Forgotten Souls. But as of me actually making this video, they just hotfixed and increased the drop rate of this. This is basically the bottleneck to do things like masterworking or re-imprinting, etc. So they've been raising the drop rates in order to solve this issue. Tempering was also something that was an issue in some of the previous seasons from Season 4 when they reworked itemization, because you could basically brick items by tempering and getting the wrong one like 5 times in a row, which would piss people off. But now you have these Scroll of Restorations, which are decently common, that you can go to re-roll once again the tempers, and basically bricking has been all but resolved at this point. One of the other things worth noting is by time you do the expansion and you finish the campaign and it dumps you out in the game, you're about level 45. Now, typically in the original launch of the game, you would be about level 45, 46, but the cap was 100. Now with the max level being 60, you're significantly closer to being at the portion of the game where you're more in-game or mid-game, like the portion where you start going and free roaming the map to do the various activities, and there's more activities to do now. We'll talk about that in just a second. So the campaign actually does a better job at pacing you into the portion of the game that you should be doing by the time you are over and completed with the campaign because of the lower level. This is something I noticed where before, when I did the campaign, because I replayed the campaign back in the day before the level cap decrease and everything to see exactly how I felt, but you would play the campaign for like 20 hours or 12 hours, 14 hours or something like that. It was a long campaign, the original one. But then you would immediately go and just like grind Hell Tides for like forever, basically. It felt like you were dumped out of the campaign really early and you had this huge grind left above you. Whereas now the progression of coming out of the campaign, the first time you play it, and most people skip the campaign after they've done it for the first time, but the progression from campaign into sort of the mid-game of difficulties is much smoother. Now, you might say that this is not an important point because like I said, people are just going to skip the campaign and, you know, who cares? People already know what the game is. It's all about in-game, etc. But for people that are coming into the game now, and yes, there's still new players that will arrive in games like this. They put it on sale. They have bundles and stuff. It's important to make the beginning experience smoother for people, so that way it's not so abrasive and you don't lose as many players to that abrasion. So I actually think having this be much more streamlined is a big improvement. One of the other improvements I'm noticing is that I'm finding myself doing a much larger variety in terms of activities. They have spaced out where you get different things, so you feel the need to actually try different contents. I'm doing the tournament bosses to try to get uniques or mythic drops. I'm doing the pit in order to get my glyphs upgraded and get some experience. I'm doing the Infernal Hordes to get masterworking materials. I'm doing the Helltide for Whispers and to get Forgotten Souls. So I'm finding myself actually interacting with all of the content, with one exception, which is the Nightmare Dungeons. I actually think they get overshadowed by the Infernal Hordes. I would not do the dungeons because I can just get way more materials, the Opticide, for instance, for masterworking from the Infernal Hordes. I would say that, okay, maybe we can put a little bit more love in the Nightmare Dungeons, but to be honest, I feel like dungeons were the worst part of the game literally already anyway. People didn't like running the dungeons, but ironically enough, the dungeons are actually massively improved as well, because now they're much more just go to the end and kill the guy. They're closer to like a pit or a rift now. You don't have to do this super annoying pick up this thing and go somewhere else unless you want to get an extra bonus chest. For the most part, it's just blast through, be done with the dungeons, which feels significantly better than having to play this stupid mini game of like backtracking a million times. So funny enough, the dungeons feel better, but you don't actually have to do them because they're the least important part of the game now. The addition of the Undercity is actually super nice as well. I really like the way they're going with target farming, which is they're adding things like the mercenary bartering system or the Undercity, for instance, in which you can sort of pick the type of item you're trying to farm pseudo through the bargain system, and this will give you a reason to do something, which is basically the pit again. I mean, if you do the Undercity, it's just another rift. Like, how many ways can you cut a pizza, right? How many different ways can we do a dungeon in which you have to farm to get some kind of reward at the end? But they actually happen to add in what is effectively another dungeon, another rift, another map that you have to clear with a reason to do it with the Undercity. So I was pleasantly surprised by this. This is another variety of content that I actually interact with. The Dark Citadel, for me, feels like aspirational content that you go. One thing I was a little bummed out to find out about the Dark Citadel is this is probably the most fun content in the game. But the cosmetics, like remember those super cool, rare cosmetics they showed during the live streams? Like, okay, here's what you get for being in tier 4. It's RNG. So you're not actually guaranteed. Like, I cleared tier 4. I'm like, let's go. We all got the cosmetic. And then we found out, no, just keep clearing it over and over and over again, and maybe it will drop. I cleared it like 3 or 4 times, and only one person in my party got one of the pieces. So you're not actually guaranteed to get the cosmetic for clearing it as an achievement. You have to just refarm it a whole bunch of times, which would be a problem, I guess. I still feel like you should just get it for clearing as an achievement, but it's actually really fun to do this literally anyway. So the progression is much more like you hit 60, you're doing the pits to get your glyphs up, you go do some of the tournament bosses to maybe get lucky with some good uniques or mythic uniques, then you piece together your build, then you masterwork it by going to the Infernal Hordes and also grinding experience and getting the masterwork pieces together to kind of upgrade your gear even a little bit further, and then you take it to the Dark Citadel to see how far can we go in the Dark Citadel. This is a pretty big step up from just, okay, I hit right after the campaign for my first campaign clear ever, or right after I started the game, immediately level 1, walking into Helltide and staying here until you're just max level, like, and then going to the final world tier and just getting your gear, and then you're done. You have nothing to do with it anyway. And I think for me, that's the biggest improvement in the expansion. And I would say the new season, but I don't think the season really has as much play with this as much as the expansion, the reworking, and the changing of the leveling in the Paragon system and all that, is the ability to make you feel like you're going to do multiple things and you're not stuck doing the same thing over and over again. The amount of times I was bored to tears where I make a new character, immediately walk into Helltide and just sit there to power level, and then, oh, I'm level 100. I guess I'm done with the game. Like, you just kind of don't even want to start a new character at this point. And it depends upon how you feel about like D3 and the leveling system, but basically going to 1 to 60, you can trade with somebody else and be like, hey, I will level you from 1 to 60 by just doing a pit for you, and then you level me 1 to 60 by doing a pit for me. And you can basically go to level 60 in like 15, 20 minutes. So you can power your level your alt very easily. And you can share the Paragon level because I'm 192 and all my alts are 192 as well. So you can try out multiple classes much easier. I feel like this is something people weren't doing in the previous iteration of the game. Like, how many people were legitimately making 3 or 4 different classes and grinding them to level 100 in a season? Like, probably not. Most of the time, someone's going to do one class. Maybe they make it to 100. But how many times have we had the conversation about, I don't even think people make it all the way to level 100 in average in the season because it either takes forever or it's really boring and monotonous. But now I realistically could see like the average person going to 60, getting some Paragon levels, trying a new character, going to 60 again because getting to 60 is much faster. I think realistically making alts is significantly easier now, which makes me like the Paragon leveling more because I feel like the progression I make on my Paragon points actually matters more outside of just this one character. So I don't feel such, pot commitment to just one character. So I do understand the Paragon leveling system being longer and a higher level is going to be contentious and not a point that everyone will agree on. I think some people maybe like this more D3 style. Some people will not like this on. So you have to decide for yourself how you feel about this system. But the alt leveling is a bonus point on this system for me personally. So and just like previous seasons, you can get bonus experience through things like Smothering Ashes, and now with the new Realm Walkers, you can actually acquire these new Opals that will give you 15% more bonus experience, which also stack with your potions for 8%, plus the Smothering Ashes, plus an incense, so you can really, really stack experience gain. So all this basically to say, a lot of the focus of like, previously, the game was on getting to level 100. And yeah, you're getting gear along the way. But now the focus is much more on getting your character, okay, you're at max level. Now you're getting Paragon points. And whatever your Paragon level happens to be is what it happens to be. But you're not just like 100% worried about maxing out literally everything. And now it's much more in like going from Torment 1 to Torment 2 and slowly acquiring better and better and better pieces of gear. There's an argument to be made that they took the experience we kind of already had and just stretched it out. So maybe it's not technically new, but the progression steps of going from like Torment 1 to Torment 2 to Torment 3 to Torment 4 actually felt much more enjoyable for me as opposed to just immediately World Tier 4 and now whatever happens to be my pit number is how strong I am. I think the Mercenary system's pretty cool too. In my opinion, I don't know if it's like a huge game-changing revelation or anything for me. I actually quite like the rapport system the most out of it, where I can get these materials I can use to then barter, and you also get these kind of bonuses. This kind of feels what I liked about like the seasonal reputation system, where you just get these little chunks of dopamine of like item drops, etc. But just continual and more of it. And now there's 4 mercenaries you can do. I don't know how much I really care realistically that much about the shields. I suppose you can min-max some cool things, and there's some way for you to get some defenses you need, etc. from this. So, it is a nice system and it is an additional layer. This just hasn't really been that game-changing for me. It's not a negative comment. It's just not one of the things that I'm like super, super enjoying about this update. But to be fair, I didn't care that much about Mercenaries in D3 or D2 either. I just kind of slapped whatever on them and they happen to be there. Also, like the additions of the Whispers seem better now, in my opinion, because not only do you get some of the materials you actually need from it, but then in addition, they're actually putting Whispers on some of the Torment bosses. So that way, if it's like, hey, what do I want to do right now? Like, maybe I feel like mixing it up. Like, oh, there's a Whisper up on the Beast of Ice or something. So you can kind of min-max getting a Whisper done while you're also killing a boss. And it's just another, they're incentivizing you to break up your experience. Like, get out of the pit, stop grinding 50 pits in a row, like maybe go do this Whisper a little bit. I also really, really like the changes of the vendor for your Purveyor of Curiosities, like this gambling. I feel like you actually have a chance at getting something pretty decent because you're going to notice you get an okay amount of uniques, and on the occasion you'll get greater affixes, etc. And because there's also a different or new addition here, being able to 40% chance to get double of them. Like the Gambler is basically, it's basically gambling a little bit from D2 with its own system. I feel like the Gambler actually feels like I have a reason to use it for target farming as opposed to it felt really worthless before. Now, I have some criticisms. I feel like it should be a little bit easier to deal with the extra ones. Like, yes, you could salvage all, but it would be maybe kind of cool if I could sell all as quickly too. Instead, I kind of have to go here and manually sell each one of these. And yeah, I mean, I could mark them as salvage, but then it's still like kind of individually having to mark them all as well anyway. And with the addition of runes, even though they feel a little mid to me, it feels like you just kind of throw the ones you need for your particular build and you just kind of like forget about them. But with the addition of the runes and the addition of crafting with the runes, I feel like trading would be more alive than ever. I say would be more alive than ever, but I don't want to sit here and spam and trade chat trying to get a trade. And I sure as hell don't want to go to some third-party website to try the trade or go to some stupid Discord. I just don't like that. The game should have a better way for us to actually be able to interact with other players to trade. I don't know if they want to do a full auction house or something, but you do need a way to interact with other people because there is reasons to trade. Now, I'm getting all kinds of items that I think people would actually like. Like I have all these greater affix items that I'm sure people would like. I'm just giving them away to people in my chat because I don't even want to bother trying to sell them. But I feel like if there was a way to, instead of just farming all these ones that maybe someone else's build could really use. I had like a triple greater affix item that I'm sure somebody would pay some money for, but I don't want to spend the time to find that person. So I feel like this is another addition that would make the game feel more alive and interactful with other players. And would also maybe future-proof some of the game, considering they're adding more and more things. Like these runes are tradable, which I think is good because they do have value because they are fairly rare. Like I need 6 of these lith runes. I've done like 250 tournament bosses or something. I've been playing the game a lot, but I have 2 of these. I mean, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with legendary runes being rare. They're rare in Diablo 2 as well. That's fine. But having a way to find the people to sell them in a game that's more MMO than any of the other Diablos would make sense to me. In conclusion, I'm going to put it this way. I've had fun with Diablo 4 before, and some seasons have been more fun than others. Season 2 was fun because I'm blasting through and the action was fun. Season 4 was fun because it was new and they kind of redid the items. Now I'm caring about items more. But this is actually the first time in the launch of a season or an update or something where I'm having fun because of the progression of my character, which I think is actually, in my opinion, the most important part of the ARPG genre is the progression of your character in a power structure style. And because I think this is the best iteration they've done from that sense, it feels like the game is in the best state it's ever been in. I think we're in a position where I can legitimately say the game feels good. Like it actually does feel good. Normally, I have a pretty large number of either negative things to say or feedback. I'm sure you guys have endured plenty of videos of me of going up here and bitching about changes I think should have happened. You're like, I'm just having fun with the game. DM's being salty or something. But with that comes the honesty of like, I legitimately think this is probably, I don't have many things to like negative to say. Like it's probably one of the only times where it's like, no, I don't like, I think it's just good. Like I don't really have a lot of this needs to change. It's like, no, I just legitimately like the game. It's fun to play. I'll probably play it for the entire month. Like, I don't know if there's been a season that I've played like a full 30 days straight of. I think I've pretty much had breaks, but I find myself enjoying the progression. I really liked playing this one all the way through. Now I'm like, nah, I really want to try like a sorcerer. Let me try a sorcerer. I want to try, the necromancer, etc. So I think this is going to be the season where I probably do a full build on like every single class because I'm just really enjoying the progression of the character. But anyway, that's my review. Overall, pretty positive about this. Obviously, I've had things to say about the campaign. Still feel that way. I don't like the campaign, but the rest of the game is quite good in this state. So if you haven't played it since the launch of Diablo 4 or Season 1, I've had a lot of people come by and be like, I haven't played it since Season 1, maybe since Season 2. Like, is the game better now? Should I try it? I think I could say yeah. Like, you probably should try it. The game feels different and improved and really enjoyable. So I'm pretty positive about it, and I'll see y'all on the next video.